Hello. Welcome to Rise and Bust. In today's episode, we will see another rise and bust story. We will analyze how it rose to glitter success, and then we will understand the mistakes that led to its downfall. And just to let you know, we post well-analyzed and real rise and fall stories. Stories of companies and people that once ruled the world, but then busted for small mistakes or series of mistakes. If you are interested in similar stories, then do not forget to hit the subscribe button. Now relax and enjoy the story, and let us know in the comments what you learned today.
Jack Tramiel created Commodore International, a home computer and electronics firm. Commodore International was an important contributor to the growth of the personal computer industry in the 1970s, 1980s, and early 1990s, together with its spin-off Commodore business machines. The Commodore 64, the most popular computer in the world, was created and sold by this firm in 1982. Commodore became one of the biggest personal computer manufacturers in the world, with quarterly sales of $49 million by the end of 1983. Chapter 1. Rise of Commodore. Jack Tramiel and Manfred Kapp, co-founders of Commodore, first crossed paths in New York City's Ace typewriter repair company during the early 1950s. They established a partnership to sell pre-owned and rebuilt typewriters in 1954 and used the proceeds to buy the Singer Typewriter Company. The market for adding machines was slowing down by 1958. Still, Tramiel connected with an Everest salesman in England, who informed him of a potential possibility to import portable typewriters made in the Czech Republic into Canada. Tramiel and Kapp established Commodore Portable Typewriter to market the imported typewriters in Toronto on October 10, 1958. Tramiel and Kapp sold a part of the business to Atlantic Acceptance Corporation to strengthen the company's financial position. In the first decade of the 1960s, Commodore expanded thanks to the financial support of Atlantic Acceptance quickly. In addition to selling Pearl Sound radio and stereo equipment, it started distributing office furniture to a Canadian manufacturer and bought a facility in West Germany to produce its typewriters. The same year, the business acquired Wilson Stationers, an office supply merchant, to operate as a distribution hub for typewriters. It struck an agreement with a Japanese producer to create adding machines for Commodore. When Atlantic Acceptance neglected to make a regular payment in 1965, it went out of business. However, because Commodore had accepted money from Atlantic to buy Wilson, and the debt was called in, it was in a precarious financial situation. Tramiel collaborated with financier Irving Gould to save himself, who arranged to sell Wilson Stationers to a U.S. business. Tramiel sold Gould 17.9% of Commodore in 1966 for $500,000 because Commodore still owed Gould money and lacked the capital to cover its obligations. Gould assumed the role of company chairman as part of the agreement. Commodore started producing its electronic calculators in 1969. In the early 1970s, Commodore was one of the more well-known brands and quickly established a profitable line of scientific and programmable calculators. Gould provided Commodore with a cash infusion, which Tramiel used to buy several second-source chip suppliers, along with MOS Technology Incorporated, to secure his supply starting in 1976. The Chessmate, a chess computer built around a MOS 6504 chip and released in 1978, was one of many peripherals and consumer electronics products that Commodore produced throughout the 1970s. Chapter 2. Creation of Home Computers. Chuck Peddle persuaded Jack Tramiel that home computers should be their next focus because calculators were already on their way out. Peddle created the Commodore PET by putting his single-board computer design in a metal case with a complete QWERTY keyboard, monochrome monitor, and tape recorder for storing programs and data. Since the release of PET in 1977, Commodore has been a computer company. Commodore was one of the top 3 manufacturers of microcomputers by 1980 and the biggest in the common market. However, the company had lost its early advantage in domestic sales. By mid-1981, its market share in America was less than 5%, and Commodore products were infrequently covered in U.S. computer magazines. With the VIC-20, Commodore put a new emphasis on the U.S. market. The PET computer line has also been primarily used in schools. Its robust all-metal construction and capacity to share printing and disk drives on a primary local area network were benefits. The VIC-20 was introduced in 1981 for $299 US. The VIC-20 was the first computer to sell over 1 million pieces. 2.5 million units were sold throughout its existence, which aided Commodore's selling to Canadian schools. As the VIC-20's replacement, Commodore released the Commodore 64 in 1982. The Commodore 64, also known as the C64, is frequently credited with launching the computer demo scene. It had exceptional sound and graphics at that time. Although it cost more than the VIC-20, $595, it was still significantly less expensive compared to other 64K computers available on the market. Tramiel began what would become known as the home computer war in 1983 when it decided to concentrate on gaining market share and drastically cut the cost of the VIC-20 and C64. In response, TI reduced the price of its 1981 released TI-99/4A calculator. In addition to conventional computer stores, Commodore started marketing the VIC-20 and C64 through mass-market retailers like Kmart. By the end of this war, Commodore had sold roughly 22 million C64s, making it the most popular computer ever. The 64's retail price was reduced by Commodore to $300 at the Consumer Electronics Show in June 1983, and stores only charged as much as $199 for it. Its VIC-20 and 64 prices were $50 less than Atari's 600XL and 800XL prices. In that year, Commodore sold nearly 3 times more computers than Atari. Despite concentrating on the cheaper end of the market, Commodore also sold computers in upscale department stores like Harrods. The Business British division was the first manufacturer to be granted a royal warrant for computerized business systems in 1984. Another notable client was NASA's Kennedy Space Center, which used over 60 Commodore systems to process paperwork, track workers and equipment, cost jobs, and guarantee the safety of hazardous materials. Early in 1984, Commodore was the most prosperous home computer manufacturer. They were generating $1 billion in annual revenue. The company's revenue for the fourth quarter of 1983 increased from $176 million to $425 million, more than doubling. Due to a bitter disagreement with board chairman Irving Gould, Tramiel resigned in January 1984. Tramiel was replaced by Marshall F. Smith, a steel executive with no background in computers or consumer marketing after Gould fired Tramiel. The industry was shocked by Tramiel's departure at the height of Commodore's financial success. He established Tramiel Technology as a new business. The company's fortunes were now in the hands of the remaining Commodore management, who also had to make future plans. To do this, it paid $25 million to acquire the Amiga Corporation, a fledgling small business, in August 1984. It was named Commodore Amiga. However, Tramiel had gotten there before Commodore. By June, he had completed 95% of his design. He acquired the consumer division of Atari Incorporated from Warner Communications in July 1984, which allowed him to retaliate by releasing the Atari ST sooner in 1985 for around $800. The Amiga team had spent the entire spring looking for additional financial support from investors because they still had severe financial issues. Chapter 3. Fall of Commodore. Despite all of its accomplishments and brave mistakes, Commodore was destined to fail. Pleasance asserts that the company's absence of an effective business plan is the cause of this. He says, "They used to stutter from one crisis to the next. There were many senior management changes, and each new hire brought a unique perspective. The issue was that they knew nothing about the computer industry after Jack Tramiel left. There were two men, one from the steel industry and one from Coca-Cola. They did not see the computer industry and never made an effort to learn it. Pleasance reports that Commodore International filed for liquidation on April 19, 1994, but Commodore UK carried on with business in a book titled Commodore. The Inside Story. Proudfoot and Pleasance faced a long-term disadvantage due to the high debt load. The two decided to investigate whether a viable business could be revived from the Commodore capital that was about to be sold in 1994. They spent months creating a business plan, and at first, everything went smoothly. Pleasance recalls enthusiastically, "We raised £50 million. We intended to create only Amiga products while allowing third parties to license the Commodore name and produce goods that would bring in money for us. We had two highly wealthy people investing half the money, as well as a Chinese manufacturer named New Star Electronics. More specifically, the strategy centered on abandoning the outdated C64 and concentrating only on the Amiga. People could be persuaded to update once they had acquired a sense of the Amiga family. More affluent customers could purchase the Amiga A1200. Customers once more had the option to upgrade to tower cases and 1000, 2000, or 3000 motherboards. Unfortunately, a key backer pulled out just 2 days before the asset auction in New York, and the plan failed. Chapter 4. Lessons to learn from the rise and fall of Commodore. The Commodore founder, Jack Tramiel, passed away on April 8, 2012. After Commodore's demise, numerous businesses continued to build and maintain the Amiga, although, by 2012, the term was primarily utilized as a brand for an operating system based on Linux. The Commodore 64 has also survived, thanks to the assistance of users and independent hardware and software makers. Inside the Guinness Book of World Records, the Commodore 64 is listed as the most unit sales of a single product of the computer. Over the course of 10 years, the Commodore 64 delivered over 17 million machines, all of which were equipped with the same characteristics as in 1982. Commodore still exists today, but only as a mix-up of legal fragments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. You can also visit our website riseandbust.com for more videos and stories like this.